Thank you very much. When I was first approached by Michael Moser, I said, no, I can't do this because I don't know anything about maneuver warfare. What I know a bit about is sort of the human factor in warfare. And he said, well, that's still within sort of the aim of this. So a warning, I'm going to talk about the human factor in warfare, not a lot about maneuvers, because I think that whether we're talking about attrition or about maneuver warfare, this is key to understanding. Also the point which my esteemed colleague pointed to, are we ready for this? And yeah, I have to say as well that I'm not talking on behalf of the Danish defense, and I think it'll be visible in a minute why it's important for me to say that. Right. So the dilemma is that in the sort of wake of the Ukraine war, armed forces across Western Europe need more people, and then the question comes: are they willing to fight? And another question comes, are they willing to fight for the right reasons? What I am researching in this project is of the correlation between personal values linking on to political ideologies, and a notion called self-sacrifice, which is a specific measure, but also the idea that you are willing to give up personal benefits for the greater good. It's the subset of what you'd call intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is that you're doing it because it's good in itself, because you like to do it, not because you get paid for it. And this is one of the things which we really, really like soldiers to do. We really, really like them to sacrifice themselves because they think it's the right thing to do, not because they get paid for it. Normally. Right, and this is measured as a part of a public service motivation questionnaire, but conceptually it should be the same. Now, personal values is what do you think about society? It is in this context. And I, leaning on research from the 70s, and still valid research, I distinguish between materialist values on the one hand and post-materialist values on the other. So materialism focuses on redistribution in society. So do you think it's fair that somebody earn more than others, or do you think that we should redistribute things? So how do you think about taxes, income differences, social justice? Post-materialism concerns values. So it focuses on individual freedom, right to self-expression, social control, and norms, social norms. And these changes, what are the norms we're looking at? So penalties is one thing. Do you think that violence or crime should be punished, or do you think that we should focus at reintegrating criminals into society? Family values is one thing, and then there's this one, immigration, which is really, really at the core of the political debates across the world in the past, say, 30 years. Now, we can distinguish between right and left on both these. So if you're leftist on materialism, you really like people to be equal. If you're righteous, you'd like the money to be in the pockets of the citizens, right? Not in the pockets of the state. Post-materialism, if you're left, let's take immigration. You are for immigration. If you're right, you are against. And of course, we can make this, which is called sort of the political compass, ideologically, where we put this into a two-dimensional space. Whereas if you're left on both materialism and post-materialism, you are leaning towards traditional socialism. If you're right in both dimensions, you're leaning towards traditional conservatism. If you are righteous on the materialism, that you think money should be with the people and not in the pockets of the state, but that you are liberal in the sense of values, yes, you're liberal. And then, of course, we have this one, which is called differently depending on which political science introduction you look in. I call it the new right. You can also name it after colors. The problem is that colors shift from country to country. So I usually paint it yellow because of the yellow vests in France. But this sort of comprises some of the new right parties. Now we are in Austria, so it would be the FPÖ, AFD in Germany, the Danish National Party in Denmark, Rassemblement National in France, and so on. Right. So, looking at self-sacrifice, and this is where I had to make sort of, this is not something which is a research project run by the Danish Defense, but they have allowed me to gain these data. So the question is, who are most willing to self-sacrifice if we look at these groups? So hopefully, you'd say if you want the military to be totally representative of society, you wouldn't find anything, right? So self-sacrifice should be equally distributed across everybody. Traditionally, you'd say it's the conservatives. But of course, given that conservatism is changing over time, and that many traditional conservative values have moved towards sort of a more social distribution, like you could hypothesize that it is the new right that represents sort of the largest propensity to self-sacrifice. Data. I did surveys with Danish cadets enrolled at the Royal Defence Academy, and these data I have here would be Army and Air Force cadets. Why Denmark? You could ask, and you should ask, it's a small state with an underfunded military, so can we infer anything from this? Maybe we can, maybe we cannot. There are two things that point in the direction of making Denmark an interesting case, apart from being a small European country, which many European countries are. There's been a very high prioritization of expeditionary forces throughout the war on terror. So in the military, not in the population, leading back to your question, but in the military, self-sacrifice has been an issue. So the losses have been immense, not compared historically to previous losses, but in comparison to the number of men and women deployed. Second, new right parties have a special role in Denmark, because in the early 2000s, due to the parliamentary setup, new right-wing parties were allowed to become part of, not to take over, but become part of sort of the parliamentary setting. Meaning that what you'd call the Bradley effect. Anyone familiar with that concept, the Bradley effect? The Bradley effect is that when you survey people, you ask them, what are you going to vote? And they're definitely going to say, if you're in Germany, I'm not going to vote AFD. But what they vote when they go to the polls might be different. But they don't want to reveal what they vote, because this is something which you tend to be shy of. But given that new right parties have become sort of part of the parliamentary settlement in Danish society, it's less controversial. So the Bradley effect is smaller. That, I think, makes the Danish case interesting, because you'd expect also these candidates to answer more honestly than compared to than candidates in other countries might be. It's less controversial. So here I ran this, throwing in everything. I don't expect you to interpret the tables, but throwing everything in, materialism and post-materialism. And if you see this first model, it shows that there is reason to worry if you really don't want me to substantiate my hypothesis, because materialism is very strong, post-materialism is not strong at all. Meaning that it seems that the more leftist you are, is negative, right? The more you're prone to embrace self-sacrifice. And if this goes, when we sort of put the two variables together, making an interaction term. If this goes together and it sort of moves up, then we have a situation where some people might be worried. Now, that doesn't happen. It goes the other way around. When you calculate the product of the two variables, it is inverted, meaning that the line does not go like this, it goes like this. So, we are back to where we started. The more conservative you are, meaning that the more you're leaning towards a conservative position in terms of both materialism and post-materialism, the more you're also likely to embrace self-sacrifice.